In this episode, I'll walk you through the process of cutting the pieces for the carcass, cutting the joinery, and doing the dry fit. The first step in the process is creating a straight, clean edge to reference off of for all my measurements. If you want to know more about breaking down sheet goods, check out some of the other build series we've done in the link in the description below. Now we can move on to cross-cutting all of our rips that we just did. If you want to know more about setting up the MFT or doing cross-cuts with the MFT, check out the link in the description. So the first step in the process is to square up this factory edge. With all the carcass pieces cut, we can label them front and back, left and right, and also do the same with the legs to then move on to joining the two together with the dominoes. When I was working on the legs, I labeled all my legs so I knew which panel they would go to, and I also knew which edge to leave square. Now I can mark out the left panel and right panel and know that now I have a square edge that's going to line up with each panel on the inside. So now it's just a matter of laying out for the mortises. I'm going to have 3 mortises in total. Coming down from the top, 37 millimeters, I'll use the flap on the domino. That'll be my tight mortise or my alignment mortise. Then I'll have 2 more, one in the center, one in the bottom. Those are going to be loose. And as always, I always mark where the mortises are going to go. These are just for reference so that as I'm doing the dominoes, I can see exactly where I need to put my mortises. So I have everything laid out, and I've got the inside of my panel facing up, and I've got the inside of my leg facing up. And I want my leg to be flush with the inside. That leaves me with about a 17 millimeter reveal on the outside. I'm going to be using the Domino DF500 with a 6 millimeter cutter. I have the plunge depth set to 20 millimeters because I'll be using a 6x40 tenon. I have the fence height set to 20 millimeters as well, based on the 18 millimeter plywood that I'll be plunging into. Now I'll do the same thing on the other side. When I laid out all the mortises for the side panels, I came off the top 37 millimeters and the bottom 37 millimeters because that's the distance from the flap to the center of my cutter. On the legs, I can only reference off the top edge because down here on the bottom, I've got the tapered leg. So what I can do is measure from the top of my panel down to where that 37 millimeter mark is, transfer that from the top of my leg down to the 37 millimeter mark. That'll give me the location for that mortise. And to keep everything consistent, I'll be doing the same pattern of the mortises, tight at the top, loose in the middle, loose at the bottom. With those mortises complete, I can do a dry fit. With this panel done, I'll go ahead and move this over, and then I'll do the other set. Now I'm going to lay out the back panel, or the back side of the drawer, for the mortises that go into the leg and the back panel itself. On the back leg, when I joined the side panels, I came down 37 millimeters for my first mortise. So on the back panel, I came down 60 millimeters and 140 millimeters. That'll offset it so I don't run into the other mortises I made. With all the layout done for the back panel, I can go ahead and make those mortises. Both of them are going to be loose. So with this one fitting good, I can go ahead and do the other side. While I still have the drawer back in place, I'm going to use it as a reference point to lay out for the bottom of the drawer enclosure. That'll be the next step in the process. I'll go ahead and label the back, the top, and the front. Take the legs off, and then I can mortise in place, and I'll have my first shelf. Gone ahead and I've changed to a 5mm cutter because I'll be using a 5mm by 30mm tenon. Switched my plunge depth to 15. I'm going to put 2 mortises in, one tight, one loose. Go ahead and do that, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now I need to do the top and the bottom shelf, then I can switch to the other panel. To lay out the top and the bottom panels of the bedside table, I have to remember that I'm going to have an offset. So once I put my panel in here, then I put my face frame, I allowed for about a 3/8 inch reveal. To get that, I want to be 8 millimeters past my panel onto my leg. So I can just use an 8mm tenon, get my spacing right, lay it down here, get 2 marks for 2 mortises, and then I'm ready to go. I've kept the cutter the same and all the other settings the same. Both of these mortises will be loose. When I start to lay out the bottom panel, I want to take a few things into consideration. With the leg on here, you can see that when I put my face frame on, I want the bottom of my face frame to be about even with the bottom of that bend. To do that, that's going to move me up about 18 millimeters or 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. And I still want to maintain that 8mm offset onto the leg. So when I fold that down, get my 8mm offset, mark 2 mortises, make them both loose, and I'll be ready to go. With the bottom panel clamped into place, rather than using the flaps or a reference mark, I'm going to use the fence of the domino to position the mortises. With all the mortises for the shelves and the right panel complete, I can do the same process on the left panel. So with the dry fit looking good, everything went together nicely. Next step in the process is to take it apart, and I'll glue the legs to the sides, and then I can start prepping the top. If you want to continue with the build, click here or check this out. Don't forget to subscribe. If you want to be notified when we upload new content, click that notification bell.